our 2023 president, and I'm joined tonight by Roxy, who is our treasurer and vice president. And we are beyond excited to have all of you with us and to be able to host our first SALMA webinar, which for us is really exciting. And I think more than that, what's beyond exciting is to see how much interest there's been and to be able to engage with everyone from Dr. Megan and Nazna, and let's see where everyone else is from, but being able to engage everyone on a challenge and a journey in hopefully revolutionizing healthcare in South Africa and changing the way we treat ourselves as doctors, our colleagues as healthcare workers, and definitely the way we help our patients.
Fantastic. We're just going to ask that if you do have any questions during this presentation, that you just pop it in the chat box and we will answer the questions at the end of the webinar.
And please feel free to turn on your camera, turn off your camera, whatever's better for you. But if you don't mind just leaving it on mute for the duration of the webinar. Okay, so our board and executive committee for 2023. And really, we are so excited to be sharing it with everyone. So first and foremost, Dr. David Glass, he's our chairman, and he's going to just quickly introduce himself. Okay. Do you want to just take yourself off mute maybe and introduce yourself, everyone?
Here we go. Thank you. Yes, I'm David Glass. I'm a retired obstetrician gynecologist, and I'm so excited about the progress that is taking place today. This is a historic event for SALMA. I have been involved in preventative healthcare since 1977, when I first went to a mission hospital in Lesotho. And over the years, I've learned so much on the internet, reading journals about preventative healthcare, and SALMA has really brought everything together and is such a privilege to participate in. And we have great plans for SALMA for the future. Thanks so much.
Okay, we also joined today by Dr. Jen Taylor, who is our vice chair lady.
Hi, everybody. It's so wonderful. I feel like this is such a historic moment. We are so excited to host you all. Yeah, I'm a lifestyle medicine physician. I work here in East London. I'm absolutely passionate about preventative health care and empowering my patients to make healthy behavior change to prevent, treat, and reverse non-communicable diseases. I spend a lot of my time working in the cardiac theatre, harvesting veins and arteries for coronary artery bypass grafts, and it always is, heartening to see how much we could do to prevent these patients from actually needing cardiac surgery in the first place. And yeah, it's just so wonderful to be connected with a like-minded group of colleagues, and we're very excited for what the future holds. Thank you.
Okay. So then just for the interest of time, I'm going to be introducing everyone else to you. Dr. Lydia Altini is our secretary, and she's a lifestyle medicine-based general practitioner. And then we have Dr. Anna Papalodopoulos, who is our public relations officer, also a lifestyle medicine for GP in South Africa. You'll get to hear mine and Roxy's stories a little bit later, but Amanda is our executive committee secretary. She's a physiotherapist who's just completed her master's in lifestyle medicine through a university in Australia. So join us in our reading our newsletter to hear about how she went about that, as well as reading about some of the amazing research she's done in South Africa in promoting lifestyle medicine for her patients. And Dr. Mohammed is a family medicine physician in KZN, who's got a massive interest in lifestyle medicine and is working really hard to do his MMed in that and to bring it into the family medicine registrar time in South Africa. So as a board, as an expo, we are very excited for everything 2023 has to offer and to be able to do it with all of you here tonight. So I think first and foremost, what most of you really came here for tonight is, what is lifestyle medicine? So a few key points is lifestyle medicine is the use of evidence-based. So we very big on science, very big on the latest evidence, And it's all about interventions, not just to prevent chronic diseases, but to actually treat and reverse diseases, which we'll get into a bit later. The idea is really that most are non-communicable diseases, whether it be diabetes, hypertension, obesity, certain cancers, are so linked to a person's lifestyle that ultimately, if we can work with them to fix their lifestyle, we can actually help them with medication perhaps, but help them get better. And that's really what it's about. It's about actually trying to treat the problem and treat that core issue, that instead of just relying on lots and lots of medications to try and patch little holes. So just a brief history. Lifestyle medicine isn't new, and I think for many people, especially older clinicians, there are many individuals who've been trying to run their practices or practice with that mentality of how do I help my patient live their best life? And then this started to become formalized by a gentleman by the name of Dr. John Kelly in America in 2004. And he actually made lifestyle medicine a thing, basically, back then. And in 2016, the American board and the international board was created to create a certification program that we are part of and will explain to you guys later on in the evening. Then, very excitingly, in America, they started to incorporate lifestyle medicine training into residency programs, particularly preventative medicine and family medicine, but they're trying to also encourage pretty much every discipline, things like ophthalmology, cardiology, to also be very comfortable with the changes and comfortable with the science to create these changes in their patients. What's even more exciting is that there are now lifestyle medicine societies on every continent. In South Africa, the biggest is actually Nigeria, then there's us. And as of this year, there are a few popping up. So the newest being Botswana. So it's definitely a growing part. And I think what's so exciting for all of us is that we get to be at the forefront of what really looks set to be part of the future of medicine.
Right, so let's chat about why there is actually a need for lifestyle medicine in South Africa in this day and age. Well, according to a World Health Organization report that was published last year, non-communicable diseases kill around 41 million people every single year, which is 74% of the global deaths. And what's quite scary is that 77% of these deaths are actually in low and middle income countries. Now, if we look at South Africa, we obviously have the quadruple burden of disease, so we're really not in a good place at the moment. We have infectious diseases, non-communicable diseases, maternal and childhood mortality, and non-accidental injuries. But what we've seen over the past couple of decades is a trend where we're moving away from having infectious diseases as our leading causes of death. And we're seeing more and more of these chronic diseases of lifestyle like diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, creeping their way up into our top 10 causes of death. And around 80% of chronic disease and premature deaths can be avoided if we just implement 4 healthy habits. The first one is a healthy diet, which focuses on plant-based whole foods and limits processed foods and animal products, regular physical activity, and abstinence from tobacco and excessive alcohol. Now, the 2021 Global Nutrition Report states that 20 to 25% of adult deaths are associated with an imbalanced diet. If you think back to the previous slide, where we have 41 million people dying every year from these chronic diseases of lifestyle, imagine if we could prevent just a quarter of those deaths just by changing our diet, how revolutionary that would be. And just to carry on from the trend in South Africa, from 2009 to 2019, South Africa progressed from having no non-communicable diseases in our top 3 causes of death to having 2, ischemic heart disease and stroke. And this obviously has a lot of implications. South Africa is already quite resource limited, and we know that non-communicable diseases are placing a huge burden on our healthcare system. I'm sure any of the interns or ComServes or Regis here can attest to that. Just an example is that patients with diabetes cost around 2.6 times more than patients without. And not only does it increase the direct costs to our healthcare system, but it also increases the indirect costs and the costs to our patients. We know that even though healthcare is free in South Africa through our government hospitals and clinics, a lot of our patients, even from low socioeconomic backgrounds, still choose to go to GPs and get private medical scripts. So that's obviously a huge cost for them. There's the cost of work missed. Sometimes people are compensated for that, sometimes they aren't. There's the cost of transportation to the clinics, where people often have to spend an entire day. And if they can't take their children with them to the clinics, then there's also the cost of childcare. So this is why it's becoming such an urgent thing that we need to address, because it's affecting our population, it's affecting our healthcare system, the costs to patients and to our country. And it really is becoming a bit of an urgency to try and treat these non-communicable diseases.
Then another big pillar in lifestyle medicine is not just that we need to treat our patients, it's to try and improve our healthcare system as a whole. And part of that is that actually healthy doctors make for healthier patients. So a core principle in lifestyle medicine is that the research has shown that the more health prone a physician is, the more likely they are to engage in conversations around diet and lifestyle with their patients. So for example, if in America, they ran studies, and if a doctor perceived that the patient had a lower BMI than themselves, they were likely to engage in conversations around obesity, weight loss, and those kinds of things. If they perceived that the patient actually weighed less than themselves, they never engaged in those conversations at all. So it just shows that even if it's subconscious, we actually impact the conversations we have with our patients just in the way we're living. I think on top of that, there's been such a mass pandemic of physician burnout. So everyone was up in arms over the COVID pandemic, but missed the fact that according to the latest Medscape research in America, that up to 47% of American physicians reported being burned out. And I think what's so sad is we don't have those statistics from South Africa, but based on the longer working hours, the higher burden, and probably the more stressful environment we're working in, we can only assume it's, if not 47%, it's probably much higher. So a fundamental principle of lifestyle medicine is that the great part is these are changes and science that you can apply to yourself even while you're healthy to just make yourself even healthier. And that helps your patients as well. Okay, so in short, we're going to go through each one of these, but there are 6 core pillars of lifestyle medicine. It's a whole food plant-based diet, sleep, daily physical activity, positive healthy relationships, avoiding risky substances, and stress management. And the idea is the combination of all 6 of these pillars allows us to live a healthier lifestyle to mitigate our risk for non-communicable diseases.
So the first pillar is a whole food plant-based diet, and I could probably talk about this for about 5 hours, but I won't keep you here that long. So we're just going to go over a few important concepts and then focus on diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease, and what the evidence is for plant-based diets with these diseases, because I mean, that's what we see in primary healthcare here in South Africa. I think every single day in my internship in ComServe, I saw hypertension, diabetes, and heart disease. So something that you may not know is that red and processed meat have been on the World Health Organization's list of carcinogens since 2014 already. So this is quite old research. And particularly the evidence is strong for colon cancer, but also for breast cancer, prostate cancer, pancreatic cancer, stomach cancer. And so we really should be avoiding red and processed meats at all costs. And quite interestingly, an article just came out yesterday, as a matter of fact, that looked at plant-based diets and prostate cancer. And what they found was that men who closely adhered to a plant-based diet had a 52% reduced risk of prostate cancer progression and a 53% reduced risk of prostate cancer recurrence. So just to jump into diabetes, this is probably one of my favorite topics. And I'm sure if anyone's gone through medical training, you're very familiar with this diagram, but we'll just go through it quite quickly. So first question is, what is actually the cause of diabetes? It's been drilled into us that the cause is just eating too much sugar and drinking too much Coke. But what actually happens? So just to go through the diagram briefly, obviously when you eat carbohydrates, it gets broken down into glucose and that goes into your bloodstream. And glucose cannot be absorbed directly from the cells, which is why we need insulin. So our body releases insulin from the pancreas and that goes to the cell and binds to the insulin receptor. Once that's happened, there is a whole cascade of reactions that happens inside the cell to put these glucose ducts into the cell membrane. So we can now get the sugar from the blood into the cells so that we can use it as fuel. So what happens? What is the cause of diabetes? Well, if we eat too much saturated fat, this fat gets stored in our cells, particularly in muscle and liver cells, where it's known as intramyocellular lipid or fat inside the muscle cells, and intrahepatocellular lipid or fat inside the liver cells. And what happens is that really bugs down what happens inside the cell. So when insulin binds to the receptor, that whole cascade of reactions cannot occur now. So now you have insulin binding to the cell, but the sugar or the glucose actually isn't getting inside. And that's what we call insulin resistance. And we're taught in medical schools that diabetes is generally not reversible. Our role as doctors is to make sure that it doesn't get worse and that our patients don't have complications from diabetes. But we're never really taught about how to reverse diabetes. And that's where a plant-based diet comes in. The Reverse Diabetes 2 Now trial looked at lifestyle interventions. So the participants with diabetes were prescribed a Mediterranean diet, which focused on limiting animal products, limiting processed foods, and focusing on whole foods and a little bit of low-fat dairy, focused on exercise and reducing stress. And what they found was quite incredible. 71% of the participants eliminated their need for insulin completely. These are people who had diabetes, were injecting themselves every day, and just through lifestyle intervention, they were completely able to come off their insulin. And 67% were able to lower their oral diabetic medication, such as metformin. And I mean, that's just incredible. If you think about someone who has had this life-changing diagnosis of diabetes, injecting themselves every day, their quality of life has deteriorated. And just with lifestyle interventions, we can actually reverse this disease and get them off their medications. Another study looked at the American Diabetes Association's diet, which again recommends lowering processed foods, lowering animal products, and increasing plant-based whole foods like your whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, fruits, and vegetables. And they found that if patients just followed this advice, then their blood sugar control improved and their cholesterol dropped. But when you take this diet and you put it head to head against a low-fat vegan diet, the vegan group actually had improved HbA1c reductions, which is a 3-month measurement of blood sugar. They had significantly lowered cholesterol compared to the ADA group. That's for LDL or bad cholesterol and total cholesterol. And the vegan group also had a lower need for medication, meaning they were able to reduce their medication needs more than the ADA group. And so how does a plant-based diet do this? Well, all of that fat that's sitting in the cell can actually be removed from the cell. And that's what happens when you eat a diet low in saturated fat and high in fiber. Now I knew this question was going to come up, so I thought I'd just address it here about the keto diet. Banting, keto, carnivore, there are about 100 variations at the moment, and everyone is proclaiming that this reverses diabetes. Obviously, there, is some truth that diabetes improves on it, and that's because you're taking away the source of the blood sugar. You're taking away the carbohydrates. What happens? You don't eat carbohydrates and your blood sugar goes down. It makes sense. But the problem is that we're not addressing the cause of the diabetes. We're just addressing one of these symptoms or the effects of the diabetes. So when you're eating this high saturated fat full of animal products and butter and coconut oil, all of that fat is still sitting in the cell. So if someone follows a Banting diet for a couple of months and then they decide to have an apple or a banana, their blood sugar is going to shoot through the roof because they still have that insulin resistance, that lipid is still sitting in their cells and their body doesn't know how to respond to glucose. If you're eating a lot of fiber, you're cutting down on the saturated, and people who follow plant-based diets with diabetes find that they're eating more carbohydrates than before, and their blood sugar is better controlled because it's coming from whole food sources. It's not processed sugar. So let's look at hypertension. What we've seen from many prospective cohort studies, like the EPIC Oxford study, the Nurses Health 1 and 2 studies, the Health Professions Follow-up study, is that vegans are less likely to be diagnosed with hypertension. And when I'm talking about vegans in this talk, I'm talking about people who are following a whole food plant-based diet. This is not all of the processed vegan junk foods and cheeses and meats. This is people who are focusing on nuts, seeds, whole grains, legumes, fruit, and veg. And what we've seen here, and this graph has been replicated in a number of studies, is that as you go from meat eaters to fish eaters to lacto-ovo vegetarians to vegans, there is a stepwise reduction in the risk of hypertension, with a vegan diet being the most protective. And the Nurses Health 1 and 2 and the Health Professions Follow-up studies found that eating just 1 serving of meat per day increased the risk of hypertension by 30%. Not only does it reduce the risk of hypertension, but plant-based diets can also be used to treat hypertension. So the DASH diet is the dietary approach to stop hypertension. And something that's common between the DASH diet and the Mediterranean diet and other plant-based diets is that they all focus on plant-based whole foods, reducing animal products and processed foods. And the DASH and Mediterranean diets sometimes have a bit of low-fat dairy or 1 or 2 servings of fish per day, but the majority of calories is coming from plant-based whole foods. And all of those diets have been shown to improve blood pressure control in people with hypertension. Obviously, salt is a big one. That's the one that we all learn about in med school, and that should be limited in a patient that has hypertension. But more than that, diet is such an important factor. And then lastly, for the whole food plant-based diet pillar is heart disease. Important question is, when does heart disease actually start? And when should I start to be concerned about my risk of heart disease? Well, the answer might actually scare you a bit. There were several studies that looked at autopsies of soldiers returning from war that had died from a traumatic event in war. These bodies were taken back to America and they did autopsies and looked at their hearts. These are young, fit guys, a lot of them early to mid-20s, peak physical condition. And this one study found that 78% of them already had coronary atherosclerosis or plaque in their arteries at such a young age. Another study looked at fetuses from mothers who had high cholesterol, and these fetuses already had fatty streaks in their arteries, which is an early stage of atherosclerosis. So to answer the question, heart disease starts right now, and we should all be concerned right now about taking steps to reduce our risk of it. Looking at a plant-based diet for heart disease, we've seen that plant-based diets reduce the risk of heart disease. But what about someone who already has heart disease, who already has had a heart attack? Is there any evidence then to implement a plant-based diet? These pictures come from the Lifestyle Heart Trial published in the late 1990s by Colwell Esselstyn. And what he did was he took 198 patients, put them on a low-fat plant-based diet, and followed them for 32 months. A lot of them had, or most of them had, coronary angiograms, which is this picture on the right. And that is a scan that we do where we inject dye into the arteries and look to see how stenosed or sclerotic they are, to see if they're open and blood is flowing freely, or to see if they actually have a lot of plaque in them. And what was so interesting is that at the beginning of the study, this is one of the patients. You can see this artery around the heart has a bit of a moth-eaten appearance. It's very narrowed. It's got a lot of plaque in it. And just after the dietary intervention, you can see in the second angiogram how beautiful and open that artery has become. This first picture over here looks at myocardial perfusion. So how much blood is getting to the heart muscle? This is important because the heart is a muscle and it needs oxygen and glucose in order to fuel it so that it can contract and pump blood throughout the body. And this first picture is before the intervention. These dark red areas are areas of good blood perfusion to the heart. Yellow is moderate, and this green-gray area is where the heart really isn't getting sufficient blood to the muscle. And after the intervention, you can see here how the blood flow to the heart muscle just completely improved on a diet. Now, the study does need to be reproduced. This is just one study that has looked at all of these angiograms and everything. So if anyone's doing a master's and needs an idea, this would be a great one. We would love to hear more about this, but it just is evidence to how powerful a plant-based diet can be. Right, and then the second pillar is physical activity. So it's been approximated that 1 in 10 premature deaths is due to inactivity. And people who get the most exercise have the least number of years of life lost, regardless of their weight. So whether you're a healthy weight, overweight, obese, just adding exercise into your daily regime is going to prolong your life. A study of 400,000 participants found that just 15 minutes of exercise a day reduced cardiovascular risk. And this is important because when we counsel our patients on exercise, or we talk to our fellow interns, ComServes, Regs, what do we all say? I don't have time to exercise. And this just shows that, you know, it doesn't have to be an hour-long session in the gym where you're lifting massive weights. It doesn't have to be training for a marathon, but just 15 minutes of a moderate intensity walk can actually reduce your risk of heart disease. And this is a great graph. So what's quite interesting here is that the greatest risk reduction came from people who were completely sedentary, not doing any exercise, to just doing 50 minutes a week. 10-minute walk 5 times a week had the greatest risk improvement here. As you exercise more, your risk reduces further, and eventually it starts to plateau out. So more is not always better. And you can see as you get to here around 4 hours a day, the risk slightly increases, which, I mean, 4 hours a day of intense exercise is probably a bit more than your body can handle. But really what we want to be aiming for is around 200 minutes per week. General guidelines say 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity exercise per week, which is just half an hour, 5 days a week. And the third pillar is stress management. Stress increases the risk of disease, both directly through cortisol and adrenaline secretion and indirectly. We know that when we're very stressed, we crave the sugary, salty, fatty foods. We're not looking to eat a salad when we're very stressed. We'd rather go and get slab chips and a burger. And we're more likely to engage in unhealthy behaviors. We don't exercise as much. We don't eat as well, more likely to smoke and binge drink. So indirectly, stress can also affect your health. And something that's very close to Selma's heart, as Yakira mentioned, is burnout and mental illness in junior doctors and doctors in general. Specifically with the COVID pandemic, but also before that, you know, doctors are very burnt out and we're not looking after ourselves. And this goes for other healthcare professionals as well. And, you know, we are our number one patients. If we don't look after ourselves, we can't look after our patients. And so we are very passionate about promoting good health amongst doctors. A study done in KZN showed that almost 60% of their doctors screened positive for burnout, which is astronomical. Mental illness has both non-modifiable and modifiable risk factors. Non-modifiable risk factors we can't really change. It's things like our genetics, traumatic events that have happened to us, environmental factors like doing a 30-hour shift, being the only ComServe in an entire hospital, running that by yourself, it's very stressful. But unless you leave the healthcare profession, there's not much you can do about that. So we choose to focus on the modifiable risk factors. So looking at stress, reducing your stress. Obviously, life is stressful. You can't always avoid stress, but how can you better manage your stress? It could be through mindfulness, through CBT, seeing a psychologist, psychiatrist. All of these things are important so that you can handle stress better. Looking at proper nutrition, focusing on eating healthy foods, even when we kind of are craving the unhealthy foods. Focusing on getting enough exercise, not living a sedentary lifestyle. A lack of sunlight exposure is a risk factor for mental illness, and we see this with seasonal affective disorder that is mainly affecting people in the UK, where they don't get sunlight during winter. And we've seen that a lack of sunlight exposure increases the risk of conditions like depression. So making sure that you're getting adequate sunlight every day is also very important, and then also avoiding addictive substances. Now, what's quite interesting is that 95% of your serotonin is actually made in your gut, not in your brain. And there's been a lot of research looking into the gut-brain axis over the past couple of decades. And we've seen that there really are two groups of bacteria in our gut. There are the good guys. These are anti-inflammatory bacteria. When we eat fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids, which get absorbed and are very beneficial to our bodies. And then you get the bad guys. These are pro-inflammatory. They increase the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines. They increase the production of TMAO, which is trimethylamine oxide. That is an independent risk factor for heart disease. And it's associated with an increased risk of depression. So how do we have a healthy gut microbiome? We need to fuel our gut with two things. First is fiber. The recommended daily allowance for women is around 25 grams a day. Recommended daily allowance for men is around 35 grams a day. But really, the more, the better. You can't overeat on fiber. And the second thing is plant diversity. You want to eat a variety of different plants, not sticking to the same ones every single day. And that will promote the growth of the good bacteria and help to crowd out the bad bacteria so that we aren't stuck with gut dysbiosis.
Our fourth pillar is sleep. So I think this is a complex relationship we all have in today's day and age, but especially as healthcare workers. If anything, we know more than anyone what happens when we don't sleep. I always say, like, post-call your cure is a different person. And I think we all know that post-call is like this terrible time in your life and everything's too much and you just almost like everything feels overwhelming and you're tired and you're moody. And the truth is that none of that is your fault, and that is a completely normal physiological response to sleep insufficiency. The biggest problem we're seeing is something called behaviorally induced insufficient sleep syndrome, which is basically that I'll sleep when I'm dead, or it's cool to always be like, hey, how are you? I'm so tired, and you? Yeah, I only got 4 hours of sleep. What about you? Oh, crap. Well, actually, then I only had 3.5 hours. That is the society we've built, and the danger of that is more frightening than I think most of us even realize. So if we just take a step back and realize that we're meant to be sleeping a third of our day, and it's not a waste of time. So sleep is important for our mental health. It helps regulate our emotions, dampens our fear response, and prevents the buildup of these toxic memories that promote PTSD as well as depression and anxiety. It's a time when our body can go into a parasympathetic system overdrive, and that is actually better for our cardiovascular system, and it therefore decreases our risk for cardiovascular disease. On top of that, it is integral for our learning and our memory. It is a time when memories are formed and forgetting can happen. And on top of that, our REM sleep and our dream sleep is the time when our mind just freewheels. And it's the part of our sleep that allows us to really start to problem solve. And while sometimes everyone's like, yeah, you should sleep on a problem, it might sound like an old wives' tale, but it's actually scientifically proven that while you're sleeping, your brain is solving those problems in the background. I think what's more frightening is the effect of chronic sleep insufficiency. What happens is for people who get 6 or fewer hours of sleep per night, if this goes on for very long, they actually stop realizing how tired they are. However, they slowly become just as debilitated as someone who is drunk. And I think we need to put that in perspective for ourselves. And as I think this is really where us as healthcare workers need to do more for ourselves, and hopefully as a group can stand up for our own rights. Because I often say, if God forbid I ever land up in casualty in the middle of the night and need a surgery, my first question will be, when last did that surgeon sleep? We all know how hard it is to push for so many hours. And the truth is, you wouldn't let a healthcare worker work on you while you're drunk. So you shouldn't actually let them operate on you while they're completely sleep deprived. So the question really becomes, how to help our patients sleep better? Sorry. And how do we sleep better? Medical school may have touched on sleep hygiene, but very often it's not enough. So the problem is that we then land up feeling completely helpless as to how to, whether it be ourselves or our patients, we don't know how to help them. So we turn to sedatives and benzodiazepines typically, which, although very helpful and make someone fall asleep, they're actually just sedating them and therefore completely disrupting their sleep and not solving the problem. Okay, so let's just take a small look at what we're talking about when we say behaviorally induced insufficient sleep syndrome. Let's just look at the average hours of sleep per night. So this was a study done by part of a survey and basically of American adults. And what we see is in 1942, there wasn't much to do when the sun went down. There was limited access to electricity or movies, everything was limited. So people went to sleep and they got nearly 8 hours of sleep. If we fast forward, we're now hitting a point where people are getting under that 6.8 hours. And you may look at that and say, oh, what's an hour? But that's a 13% decrease, which is 13% less time your body's healing, learning, growing, having good mental health, and having good cardiovascular health. So it's quite a significant amount. And then if we just look at what happens. So this is a publication by Johns Hopkins University, and they have estimated 6,000 fatal car accidents are due to drowsy driving because you have these micro sleeps. So people are driving like not off. I think the scary thing is most of us here know that we've had those when you're post-call. The problem is those are probably even longer duration. What's happening the rest of the time when you're tired and it's more chronic and it's 6 hours here and 6 hours there, not no sleep? Probably the same thing. I think the other really interesting part around sleep is its effect on ghrelin, which is the hormone that makes us hungry, and leptin, which makes us fuller. And actually what's so interesting is the risk of obesity goes up 50% if you get less than 5 hours of sleep per night, because your body's tired, so it starts seeking sugar to give itself energy, and you actually land up eating significantly more. So seriously, for your patients trying to lose weight, it may be as part of it may be just saying to them, but how much sleep are they getting? And is that not affecting how much they're eating? So for us, lifestyle medicine and one of the pillars, as you can see, are all really interlinked. And it's hard to say you can just heal someone with one without the other. So they all become exceptionally important. And that leads us to our fifth pillar, which is the avoidance of risky substances. Okay, so avoidance of risky substances. According to the NIH, so sorry, Roxy, would you mind going to the next slide? I don't know if that's my internet. Oh, there you go.
It is on the next slide on my side. Is it not coming through
There we
to
go.
you?
Sorry, it just came through. I'm so sorry. That was my internet having a delay. Sorry about that. So avoidance of risky substances. So the focus that we really have is on tobacco and ethanol use. And I think that's because traditionally in societies, we know a lot about the dangers of illicit substances. I think also the word illicit substances even kind of makes them sound taboo. And already that's going to lower how many patients are using them. But we know that our patients drink. What's even worse in South Africa is we don't have clear statistics, but we've all worked month end. We know the binge drinking, and that's actually even worse. And that's even more dangerous for people. But in America, their stats at least are showing us that almost 26% of people over the age of 18 are reporting heavy binge drinking, which is at least 5 drinks in 2 hours for men or 4 in 2 hours for women at a given time. And heavy alcohol use is up to nearly 6.3% of people, which is becoming problematic when society is almost accepting of alcohol. And we now know that there's no safe limit to alcohol, that any alcohol puts us at risk of cancers. So I think that really needs to be highlighted to our patients and as part of the discussion we have with them. On top of that, tobacco use actually is estimated to kill 1 in every 2. So 50% of people who smoke as well as a cause of 33% of cancers, which we're going to go into now, but that's 7 different types of cancers primarily that it's causing. So lifestyle medicine is a great tool to empower us as physicians or any healthcare worker to have these conversations, but also to become more familiar with drugs like varenicline, bupropion, which have had excellent results in abstinence from smoking, as well as things like naltrexone for patients who have alcohol use disorder. And why that's helpful is because telling people to quit something so addictive usually doesn't work. So we need to be their helping hand and be able to help them through motivational interviewing. But we also need to empower ourselves to use the tools at our disposal, like these medications, to assist our patients in actually reaching their end goal of abstinence. Sorry, would you mind going to the next slide? Okay, so this is just a short diagram but from the CDC that really highlights that tobacco use pretty much kills, because it affects every area from your oropharynx and nasopharynx all the way down into the lungs, the digestive system, and the bladder. So we know that realistically, when we asking patients if they smoke, the top of our list goes to things like COPD, it goes to lung cancer. The truth is, it needs to extend far broader. These are patients who are at risk of cancer pretty much anywhere in their body. And they're not just slightly at risk. We're saying 33% of cancers would have been prevented had they not smoked. So we really need to be more on top of that. And I think we all do it, calculate a pack here and move on. But that's a bigger conversation to have with our patients. And finally, positive, healthy relationships. So that's our 6th pillar. And I think such a beautiful one to tie everything together, especially in a post-COVID world. The world is, we all felt it. We know that isolation was a significant problem. And I think that what's really interesting is this was a Harvard study. It was the longest study done on trying to understand happiness. It was 75 years, over 268 participants. It was graduates, and they've mapped it out. And what they found is that what made people happiest in the long term was actually having good, positive social relationships. And that's something that we can try and help our patients with. We can talk to them about, we can check in with, especially our elderly patients. And another great part of lifestyle medicines are things like group appointments, and how we can use our own ability as healthcare workers to create a community for our patients and give them that. And most importantly, for ourselves as healthcare workers, to remind ourselves to reach out and have these positive interactions. Okay, so I'm going to keep this very brief. My journey to lifestyle medicine certification and the value it's added to my career. So already in medical school, I realized that the healthcare system is failing doctors and failing patients. I saw how burnt out just even in med school people were already. And I think that got worse during internship in ComServe during COVID. Like Roxy, sat in numerous clinics that felt like they were never going to end. Patients like 100 of the day, diabetic, hypertensive, and worse, just the script. And you are writing like 30 medications per go-go leaves with like a pick and pay packet of medications. And I just kept thinking, but I want to help these people. I want to discuss lifestyle with them. I personally did not feel empowered enough after med school to really have those conversations. From my own interest in my own personal interest in wellness and my own personal health interest, I learned a lot and then started to share that with my patients. And whether it be good Instagram cookies, God, and being fortuitous, I came across Selma last year at the very beginning of my ComServe year, and I committed to do my diploma in lifestyle medicine in December last year. And quite honestly, it was just an amazing journey. I feel I learned so much that I've used to help my family and definitely to help my patients. I really and truly got to sit down, even in a public setting with patients, and finally feel more empowered to discuss with them what they can do to make themselves healthier, even in their limited settings. And I felt very empowered that despite the challenges our patients can face sometimes, they wanted this information. They were interested. They just have never had the opportunity to share that. So that for me was just super powerful, and it's the start, in my opinion, of a very exciting journey.
So my story started back in the second year of medical school. I went fully plant-based in my second year, and I was interested in the health benefits of a plant-based diet. So I did a lot of my own research, and I really just felt like the information that we received from medical schools on nutrition was lacking. What we got taught was very surface level. Hypertension patients should avoid salt, diabetic should avoid sugar, and the rest of our nutrition lectures were about lipid metabolism and glucose metabolism. I don't know if anyone remembers the Krebs cycle. I certainly don't. And so during my final year of medical school, I did an elective in Washington, D.C. Under Dr. Neil Barnard, who is one of the pioneers of plant-based nutrition. And that completely changed my life. I was seeing patients in their clinic who they focused their interventions on nutrition and exercise. And these were patients who had had diabetes for 3 years off all of their medication. Patients losing 80 kilograms. I'll never forget the one patient whose entire body was covered in psoriasis. Around 70% of her body was covered in psoriasis. And just through making lifestyle changes, she was actually able to completely eradicate her psoriasis. I wanted to devote my career to having this impact on patients, to be able to counsel them on nutrition and other lifestyle changes that can really improve their lives. And so I did my internship in community service, and then also came across Salma last year and joined the committee. And honestly, it's been one of the best decisions of my life. Like Yakira, I did my lifestyle medicine diploma last year, and it was just so interesting to learn so many practical applications of some of the theory we'd learned in medical school. I already knew quite a bit of the nutrition side of things, but the exercise, sleep, stress, positive relationships, that was all new to me. And not just knowing the theory of REM cycles, but actually knowing how to counsel patients to improve their sleep and how that can affect their lives as well was very empowering to me. And now I've also gone into plant-based nutrition full time, and I definitely think that the lifestyle medicine diploma really put me on the right foot to be able to exciting. So if any of you are interested in doing your lifestyle medicine diploma as well, these are the steps. So first you join Salma as a member. You then sign up with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. They have a 30-hour course that you do. They post you the manual for you to study from. And then there are also online lectures that you can watch and an online version of the manual. One of the other requirements is that you attend a conference. It can be specifically in nutrition or lifestyle medicine in general. And they do have a list of conferences that you can join for your CME credits. And then you submit a case report of a patient who has implemented lifestyle changes and to show what the effects were. And you can also be your own patient for this report. Then towards the end of the year, there's a 3 to 4 hour exam of 150 MCQs that you write. There are certain testing centers in South Africa, but you can also write it remotely if you aren't close to one, which is what I did last year. And it really, I mean, the information is so fascinating, but it's also completely doable. Yakira and I were working full time, and we were both able to complete it and study for it within a couple of months. And we also have a recording of a previous webinar that we did to run through these steps, which you can watch on our website. And if you do have any questions, then please do let us know as well. And then our plans for 2023, we do have some very exciting webinars planned in the coming months, which all will be CPD accredited. This webinar was free, but for the upcoming webinars, you do need to be a member of SALMA in order to attend. And if you have any interesting topics that you would like us to cover, then please reach out to us as well. We would love to hear from you. We're also focusing on writing blog posts, monthly newsletters, summarizing some of the latest studies coming out in lifestyle medicine so that you can always be on top of the research. And we're also looking at growing a base of educational resources, pamphlets, booklets that you can download from our website, both for yourself and to be able to pass on to your patients. We also want to look at setting up student societies. So if there is anyone that's joined this call, that's a faculty member or a student, and you would love to be involved in that, then please do reach out to us as well. Great, so I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and look at some of the questions we have here. All right, so first question, will we have access to the slides at the end of the seminar? Yes, we will. We can send you the slides, and we also are recording this, so we will upload a recording to our website of this. Next question, could we use an alternative to plant-based, for example, lean meats, turkey, egg white, low-fat dairy, rather than a complete vegan diet in someone who's struggling to maintain energy, protein, iron levels on a vegan diet? Will this satisfy the pillars of lifestyle medicine, or is it only considered lifestyle medicine if one is completely plant-based? So what we do see is that as you go more towards the spectrum of a full plant-based diet, the health benefits are more dramatic, but you don't have to be completely vegan in order to reap these benefits. The focus should be on reducing processed foods, reducing mainly red and processed meats, and focusing on whole foods, your whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, fruits, and vegetables. Sometimes it isn't completely practical to go completely vegan, especially for a lot of our patients who are in lower socioeconomic status backgrounds. But the more whole foods you eat, the more benefits you're going to see. So that's what lifestyle medicine focuses on. It's not a completely vegan diet, but just working towards more of a healthful and health promoting diet. Does that suggest that plant-based diet not only reduces risk of heart disease, but can also reverse changes? So according to this study, yes, it definitely looks like a plant-based diet can reverse heart disease, which is incredible. As I said, this is one study which does need to be replicated. But we've also seen, there was such an interesting study that looked at plant-based diets versus statins, and a plant-based diet actually lowered cholesterol more than the statin medication. So it is extremely powerful, and we do need more research, but I mean, the studies that are out there are undeniable at this point. Is it possible to start a national provincial database for lifestyle medicine-minded health practitioners for the purpose of MDT referral? That is a fantastic suggestion. Yakira, I don't know if you want to comment on that. I think we should definitely look into setting up something like that. We do have on our website, there are lifestyle medicine accredited doctors that you can go and have a look at if you're looking for someone in specific areas. So if you are accredited in it or you've done your diploma, please let us know and we can add you to that database. Otherwise, I think we should definitely look into setting up something like that. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Sorry, so Bronwyn, I did reply. Don't know why it came up as a comment, not a reply. But basically, I think your idea is fantastic, and we are trying to build up a little bit more of a database around people and organizations in the space, because it can feel very lonely. So it's really fun and exciting when you find like-minded people. And the other side of it is we created a Facebook group for our members. So if that would interest you, perhaps you could consider joining as a member. And the idea of this Facebook group is to create a community to discuss these kinds of topics, to share, to refer, to share really interesting data and information. I don't think you have to certify in lifestyle medicine to be interested and use it. And we're hoping that through Salma, we can share enough knowledge that, and a lot of people have interests, and you can just have that lifestyle focus in your practice. So that's the other thing I would say maybe we could definitely consider, but I'll also be in contact with you about how we can set something like this up and include you as our database. And to answer your second question, the lifestyle diploma is actually open to any healthcare worker, which is so exciting. It is slightly different. It's a 4-hour exam for doctors and a 3-hour exam for non-physicians. But other than that, I think the course is actually identical. and the knowledge gained is exceptionally powerful. So you can definitely do it. And that would be so exciting to have in South Africa.
Great. And then
Sorry,
there's just one
back to
last
me.
question. Just one last question I see here. What are the alternative opportunities, places of employment in South Africa where doctors can exclusively practice lifestyle medicine? So as far as I know, this is very much based on what you do. You know, if you're in a GP practice or you want to start your own lifestyle medicine center, then you can do that. Jen and Dave, I'm not sure if you want to jump in here, if you know of any other places where people can practice lifestyle medicine, but otherwise it really is just about incorporating it into your daily practice wherever you are. But if you choose to specifically practice only lifestyle medicine, then we'd love to hear from you as well. Dave, I see you just unmuted.
I think it's important to realize that every single patient interaction should be an opportunity to talk about lifestyle medicine, even if it's just for 2 minutes. Even if it's just to tell the patients that you know not necessary for you to continue taking more and more medicines for the rest of your life. There is another option. And when patients get that information, it can make a huge difference. In the public sector, there is a huge opportunity to have a whole team approach. You know, health educators, nurses who can do health education, physiotherapists, dietitians who can all participate in this. I think there needs to be a change in attitude of public service teams to recognize the importance of lifestyle changes, because that can reduce dramatically the impact of non-communicable diseases on our patients.
I can also just say something. So after doing my certification, I actually decided to stop working as just a general GP with that sort of 10-minute, consultation time that our medical aids support. And I've actually broken away and sort of formed my own private lifestyle medicine practice. So if anybody out there is interested in, contacting me directly and hearing a little bit more how I went about that, you're very, very welcome to reach out.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Jen.
Jen and Dave.
Jen, would you mind maybe popping an email, your email address, and then have
Yeah,
us
sure.
reach out, you can email you?
Of course, I'd love to.
Rox, do you mind if I answer Jaden's question?
Sure. I think that'll be the
Okay.
last one because we are out of time after that.
Absolutely.
I also have a comment on that to add.
No, that's perfect. And then
Perfect.
maybe we can just share the link to sign up as a SELMA member, because I see Megan's question. Firstly, very cool that you're a nutritionist and a personal trainer. That's amazing. And we can all learn so much from you. Maybe you can reach out to us either by email, or please look at signing up and just becoming a member even. We're hoping to, like I said, build a community and host multiple events. So that would be an amazing way to get involved. And we really always open, and the more people involved, interested, and whatever you're interested in, I'll put my number here. Please send me a WhatsApp and we can make a time to chat. And then Jaden, just to answer your question. So quite honestly, this is a big driver for me. I have a very sad feeling around the idea of wellness or health being kind of monopolized by the really wealthy parts of society. And I just want to share quickly with you that I don't want you to be discouraged. I'm currently in the dark because I'm actually volunteering in rural Uganda. And I'm on an island in the middle of Lake Victoria, where they basically have no electricity or running water. It's it's rural. And what's crazy is I told these people, listen, like the organization, like, we give you meals. I'm like, okay, listen, I'm vegetarian. And they're like, okay, that's fine. And I look around me, I cannot tell you how inspiring it's been. Like, the people walk everywhere and they make their own food from what they grow. So today's lunch was these green bananas that they cook in a sauce. Why? Because the bananas are in season and that's what they grow. So even today in the clinic, I saw a patient with diabetes. And what was funny is it's one of the first patients I've seen with diabetes compared to home, where it's every patient. And we had lots of conversations around, but what is she doing differently almost to the rest of her community. So I must say I was in your boat, where I felt like I didn't understand how to go around having these conversations with patients from lower economic status. And what I've learned through my time here, but also the course, and then talking to our patients in states and low backgrounds, is the truth is it's cheaper to buy beans, raw beans, and soak them overnight and make a massive delicious stew than it is to cook meat, especially because they're eating poor quality meat. It's easy to encourage them to swap peanut butter that's got sugar for no sugar added, no salt added, so like the yellow black cat even, peanut butter. So I think it can be difficult at times, but we're very happy to chat and kind of work on creating that database in South Africa about cheap meals. And a lot of the times it's really about encouraging our patients to stop trying to be Western in their diets and to go back to eating how their ancestors ate, because the foods they grew up with are actually usually the foods that are really good for them. I don't know if that helps you at all. That's just my own personal experience, feeling stuck in a way that you also did.
Just to add to that, and just the last comment before we end off, if you do need to jump off, no problem. It is unrealistic to expect people who are feeding a family of 5 on 300 Rand a month to go completely vegan and, live this lifestyle that I'm living. That's not realistic. That's not what we recommend. What we do recommend is trying to find the cheapest changes or alternatives. Yakira mentioned a great one, beans. Beans are fantastic. They have fiber, protein, healthy carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates. Fantastic. They even have I think it's called the second meal effect, where if someone has one meal with beans and without, the meal with beans actually reduces your blood glucose in the second meal you eat in the day as well. So legumes are incredibly helpful. Fresh fruits like your apples and bananas at the taxi ranks, they're only around 2 to 3 Rand per fruit, which is what I've heard from my patients. And so encouraging them to eat 2-3 portions of fruit a day from that, and just looking to make these changes where it's affordable. We don't want to be unrealistic in our approach to this. We just want to make things as healthy and easy for our patients as possible. And if they do eat the odd meat or whatever, then that's fine. We're not looking to go as extreme as possible here, but just looking for any cheap alternatives that they can make. I see there was, just one last comment about looking into changes for low-income countries. There was actually a study just done by the Physicians Association for Nutrition and Ubuntu Wellness that looked at plant-based diets in people from low SES areas, and that's been submitted for publication, so hopefully that'll be out soon, but that will be a great study for us to have a look at. But again, if you have any ideas or anything that you would like to share with us, that would be great, and we would love to build up a database of cheap foods in South Africa that we can recommend to our patients from low SES backgrounds. So I think if that's all, thank you everyone for joining us so much. I'll let Yakira end it off for us.
Thank you so much to everyone, especially to Roxy, for, as always, sharing just wealth of knowledge. But really, thank you everyone for joining. Quite honestly, I personally am really excited to have had the opportunity to, even if it's just over Zoom chat, talk to you guys and get to know everyone. I think it's really exciting to see how many people are interested in this space, and definitely going to be reaching out to anyone. I've also posted my number there. Please feel free to reach out to me as well. I would also really encourage you to sign up as a member. It's 500 Rand for allies and 800 Rand for the year for doctors. And you don't have to necessarily certify if that's not currently on your plans, but just to be a part of our community, to be able to be a part of these conversations for webinars, blog posts, growing your knowledge. And we really hope to be in contact and see you all very shortly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roxy and Yakira. That was awesome.
Thanks, everyone. Have a beautiful day. Thanks for joining us.